Hello, everybody. What's up, guys? Kanye West 215 here, coming back at you with another video. I know, I'm just cranking out videos left and right. Kanye West 215, when are you ever going to take a break? You've just been working so hard, pleasing your subscribers on YouTube. I'm like, I know, but I love my subscribers so much, so I'm just cranking out another video for you guys. I know, just once a year, one video a year, damn. But anyways, this video has to do with grading. So I haven't really made a video like this, but I feel like it would be pretty helpful for people looking to send to PSA and getting a good idea of what cards they might want to send. So this video mainly pertains to people that want to aim for PSA 9s and PSA 10s, mainly PSA 10s, and basically what to look for in a card to enhance your chances at getting a PSA 10. So I just want to clear up this misconception. So PSA 10 does not always mean that the card is perfect. So PSA does allow a bit of leeway for very minor imperfection or two. More often than not, the imperfection is very minimal. In my opinion, there's no such thing as an absolutely perfect card anyways, but PSA 10s are as close as you'll get to a perfect card. And obviously, if the card is pretty much pristine, there's no grade higher than a PSA 10, so they'll also give it a PSA 10. But a PSA 10 is basically a range. It's like a very narrow range, but it does allow very minor imperfections sometimes, just so you guys know. But it's the next best thing we have, since people's subjective opinions of conditions can vary widely, and over the course of the years, purchasing cards on eBay and TCG Player and Facebook, Instagram, whatever, buying raw cards for old school vintage cards, it's just been such a pain because people's definitions of near mint and also mint and quote unquote gradable, it really varies, and sometimes you get cards that would grade 6s and 7s and they're classified as mint. So I just want to make this video to kind of standardize card conditions based on the PSA guidelines from my experience grading Yu-Gi-Oh cards, also BGS. So the stuff I mentioned in this video can also apply to BGS. We're going to start off by showing some examples and basically what I do to maximize my chances of getting PSA 10s and worst case maybe PSA 9s, unless I miss something very large, but it really doesn't happen often if you follow these steps. So the first thing that I do when I assess a card and whether it's gradable, meaning whether it's a candidate for a PSA 10 or not, is the first thing I do is check the integrity of the card. So what I mean by checking the integrity of the card is kind of looking at the structure of the card, not looking at the edge wear or the corner wear or the scratches or anything like that, but like the overall integrity of the card. To do that, you want to make sure there's a glare on the card and kind of move the glare around the card and see if there's any imperfections with the surface and the integrity. So you look for bends and dents and deep scratches and lifted corners and stuff like that. And this is one thing that a lot of people seem to miss when they evaluate conditions of cards. Sometimes there might be like a very light binder dent somewhere, and honestly, if you look at a card straight on like this card looks pretty minty. Like, it doesn't have any edge wear or corner wear, like nothing major at all. Like, you would think this could get like a PSA 9, maybe even a 10. However, once you check the integrity of the card, you'll see there's a big dent right there. Yeah, that's very bad, but I did buy this card as near mint online. They obviously missed that somehow, but it definitely also depends on the lighting. So right now we have pretty good lamp lighting, but different lighting, you can actually capture different imperfections. So maybe the person didn't notice, or they just looked at the card front on and like directly and didn't see any edge wear and they said it was near mint. But very important, definitely check the integrity of the card. So you want to shine the light on the four corners and then check the rest of the surface. So you definitely want to get the glare on the corners, because a lot of times there might be some raised corners or like slightly bent corners, and it's very easy to miss, okay? And you might be expecting a 9 or a 10, and then it comes back a PSA 7 or a 6 or just something not ideal, and you're like, what the heck happened? Well, there might be a minor corner bend or a dent that you missed. This is obviously pretty obvious, but sometimes they do become a little more subtle than that, and it's very important to check the integrity of the card. So let's check the integrity on the Stardust. On first glance, you see that little bit of edge wear up there. That in itself will knock down the grade, maybe 1 or 2 grades. I mean, it's not too, that doesn't look too great, but once you check the integrity of the card, I mean, at first it looks okay, but you see there's a slight little something up there on that edge. And if you shine the light there, you'll see like a lifted edge. So that is something to look out for on cards where you won't notice if you just look at the card like that. Definitely shine the light and get a glare on the card so you can see the surface nice and clear. So that is the first thing I usually do. Integrity issues will knock down the grade of the card the most. So a single binder dent will knock the card down to a 6 or a 7 right away. No matter if there's any edge wear, if there's corner wear, it could be completely perfect on the edges. It can be perfect on the surface in terms of like, you know, scratches and stuff. There can be no scratches, no edge wear, anything, and have like a dent like that. And boom, your card's a 6 now. And it's like, what the heck happened? It's very easy to miss it if you don't check the card in this manner. And then next, you would check for the edges and the corners to see if there's any whitening or not. So check the front, you see there's some whitening up there. It's very minor, so like if that was the only thing wrong with the card, I would probably potentially still send it. It's quite minor. However, there's more than just that. And keep in mind, if you're using flash, sometimes it's hard to see edge wear. So actually the less light, the more prominent the edge wear is. It's kind of counterintuitive, but sometimes if the flash is too bright, it'll kind of conceal the edge wear. So keep that in mind. You might want to play around with different lighting if you take this very seriously, but here you can clearly see edge wear right there. So yeah, this I would not send to PSA unless you're fine getting like well, there's a dent too. This would probably get like a 5 or 6. And then after that, I like to check the surface of the card, not the integrity, but to see if there's any scratches, like very deep scratches. You can kind of see them when you're checking the integrity, but for light scratches, it's hard to see when you shine it with a glare. So what you want to do is you kind of want to tilt the card, and there, see right now you don't see anything, but when you tilt it at a certain angle, you'll start to see these like scuffs on the card. Yeah, you'll see scuffs. There's actually a tiny dent right there too. The foiling, it can be kind of hard to see scratches. This one doesn't look too bad. So here, let's see. So we're looking for any scratches. So at first, the hollow looks really nice. Doesn't look like there's any scratches. But if you play around with the angle, you'll start to see scratches all over the foil of it. Like over here. Yeah, you can definitely see the card is pretty scuffed up at certain angles. So it's really important to play around with the angles and the lighting. Otherwise, you'll just look at it like this and be like, yeah, that foil looks really good. And keep in mind, the most important surface that they grade on, at least for PSA, is the foil. If there's any scratches, you will likely get docked points for it. Now the back, it's also important. You see a lot of these kind of wear scratches all across the card. Generally, that might degrade it as well. But the most important place to check for scratches is the foiling. If you get even just like 1 or 2 scratches on the foil, you might get a 9 instead of a 10. Sometimes maybe 1 scratch might, slip through and get a 10, but if it's like 2 or 3 or more scratches, it'll be harder and harder to get a 10. However, on the back side, I mean, this one has a bunch of scratches, so there's no chance this would ever grade a 10, but if there's only like a few, maybe 2 or 3 light scratches on the back, that actually can still pass as a 10. Make sure it doesn't look like this, but like a few very light scratches, as long as they're not like deep indents, and if everything else looks good, it can honestly still get a PSA 10. So some people might not know that. The card doesn't have to be 100% perfect. So the front centering matters a lot more than the back. The back can honestly be super off-centered and still get a 10 if the front is well-centered. So that's the case for PSA. BGS actually cares a little bit more about the back centering, but PSA, honestly, like they almost don't care about the back centering unless it's like ridiculously off-centered. But even then, I've seen cases, including myself, I've graded cards that have been quite off-centered on the back, but centered on the front, and it still gets a PSA 10. But the front really, really matters for centering. It has to be a 60-40 ratio on the opposite borders, top, bottom, and also left to right. It has to be 6:4 ratio or better to be within the guidelines for a PSA 10. So as you can see on this card, it's not too bad, but the left is a little thicker than the right, and the top is a little bit thicker than the bottom. So this is not, the ideal centering to have. Sometimes like this, it could slip and get a 10. However, I've heard recently they've been a lot more strict on the centering, but I can't really confirm if they've actually gotten stricter or not. But there's a lot of times where you see the older certification numbers, certification number meaning that because they're graded in, you know, sequential order. Some of the lower numbers, you'll see the centering of the cards might be a bit off and still be a PSA 10 because, I don't know, people have been saying that they've gotten stricter over the years, or over the past few months actually, on the centering, while they were pretty relaxed back then. I don't know how true that is, but I mean, if you want to maximize your chances at a 10, the more centered, the better. But the back honestly doesn't matter. But yeah, so just make sure your card is centered. It can be a little off-centered, you know, it doesn't have to be 50-50. Most PSA 10s aren't 50-50 anyways, but just make sure that hopefully they're within 3-to-2 ratio. So, but yes. And here are just some more examples, and I'm just going to go over the conditions of them and tell you guys why I wouldn't send certain cards. Like this, honestly, looks really clean from the front. Like, wow, look at that. Upon first glance, looks like a decent card. Honestly, looks like a decent card. However, you can look more closely, and let's do the glare test. And you see that corner right there has a little bit of a bend, a little raised corner. That's what I'm talking about. And it's easy to miss that, honestly. It can be pretty easy to miss. And you can see right there. And I mean, there's some, I guess you can call it micro edgeware up there. And I'm going to be honest with you, if that is the only thing wrong with your card, let's say it didn't have that, it didn't have this ding on the bottom, it just had that like very minor whitening. It's not even like, it's almost not even there. If that's the only thing wrong with the card, it could still get a 10. Like, it doesn't have to be perfect. If that is the only thing wrong with the card's well centered, no scratches on the foil, no dents, nothing, and it's super clean. A tiny micro edgeware that you can barely see, that can honestly still pass as a 10. So that might be a misconception that, you know, there can be zero edgeware. Sometimes PSA 10s allow like a tiny dot of white or some very minor micro edgeware. And I call that micro edgeware. With the Stardust, like this is straight up. Like that's edgeware right there, my boys. But this is what I call like micro edgeware. So it's very difficult to see. So that can still pass as a 10 if that was the only thing wrong with the card. But here you see like an ulti stamp, very common on Ultimates. You see that square. Some graders let it pass. Some graders deduct like a point for it, but it just depends. You have to get lucky to get 10s on ultis. And here you can see a ding right there on the right. But on first glance, this card looked pretty good. Once again, I bought this as a near mint to mint card. Centering looks very, very good. Extremely good, actually. The surface of this one looks very nice. Pretty nice. And the foil, no scratches, really. And wow, look at the back. Pretty much no edgeware, cornerware, or anything like that. Well, I'm not sending this to PSA. Why is that? The reason is, I mean, this card looks extremely clean. Like, if it wasn't for this minor imperfection, I would send it. However, if you look on the top there, there is some minor dents. Now, it's not just one. If it was just like one tiny little dot, I'd still send it. But there's like multiple pin-sized dents on top right there. So, very easy to miss imperfections like this. Like, it looks perfect like that, but once you tilt it, you'll start to see the imperfections. So that's the reason I'm not sending this. Otherwise, I would send this off to PSA, but it does have those minor dents on the top there. Here's a wavy trap hole, and right away you can see there's like a lifted edge there. Don't want to send that to PSA. You see scuffs on the back or like scratches, and those scratches are mainly from going in and out of sleeves. Yeah, the surface is not great. Some wear down there. Some scratches on the foil. Like, this centering would pass as a 10 for sure, but it's just, there's too many scratches on it, and there's corner wear there, corner wear there. You can see some dents or like nail marks once you shine it with a glare. And wow, look at that. Deep scratches. This was also purchased as near mint. I mean, I don't really know if that's near mint. But if you look at it like this, yeah, it looks near mint as hell, bro. But what the hell is that one? Yeah. That's why we buy PSA graded cards, boys. Most people, when they look at conditions, they just check to see if there's any edge wear. There's no edge wear, boom, that's a mint card. Nah, bruh. You gotta check the surface, you gotta check the scratches, you gotta check... There's a lot of other things to check other than just, you know, edge wear or corner wear. And honestly, very minor edge wear, you could still get a PSA 9 or PSA 10 sometimes. So that's honestly not the only thing you look at when you assess the conditions of cards. And lastly, here's a Karibo, and I actually think this is a solid looking card. So as you can see, integrity of the card looks pretty good. That corner, I think it's fine. Let's see, any scratches on the foil? A little bit something there. It just comes off though, so we Gucci. I mean, this thing looks super clean. Integrity, nothing really wrong with the integrity of the card here. Now, let's check for any edge wear or corner wear. I guess there's a tiny speck of white down there. That tiny speck up there is so minuscule that if that was the only thing wrong with the card, it could definitely get a 10. That one's definitely more iffy. And now let's check the surface of the back for any scratching. See, there's one light scratch right there. You can't really see it unless you're at the right angle. There's a little bit of something. I don't know what those white specks are, but surface is not too bad. Honestly, if that scratch and that scratch were the only thing wrong with the card, it could still get a 10. But here we have not the best corner, 2 scratches there, some white specks there, and the centering now. The centering top to bottom is pretty borderline. So I wouldn't have too much confidence in this getting a 10 based on the centering itself. There's definitely 10s with this centering, like that it definitely exists, but it doesn't really mean that this will get a 10. It just means you could get lucky and get a 10. This is why I'm not sending this card. I think most likely this will get a PSA 9. Centering's not perfect, top to bottom. You can see the side is thicker, and then you have a little bit of whitening down there, some white specks there. And, you know, the card is still definitely very clean, but I just wouldn't send this personally. But this is very close to the condition of the type of cards I would send. If this was like a very expensive card, it would still be worth grading in my opinion. I mean, even getting a 9 would be fine. But I just, you know, Karibo over here. Just gonna keep it in the binder. So yes, that's about it for this video. Hope you guys found it educational. I hope you guys learned something about, you know, grading cards in general and what you should look for when you're evaluating a card and, you know, trying to decide whether or not you should send it to a grading company. And if you guys are curious what's up with my life, you know, quarantining and chilling right now pretty much for the next few months maybe. But I am in medical school, but right now we have transitioned to online medical school. So I'm pretty much home all day. I can't even leave my freaking crib. So yeah, definitely the health of the public is way more important. The pro of not being able to leave my house is that I'll probably be able to make a few more videos more often. So if you guys have any video ideas that you guys are interested in, let me know and maybe I can make that happen for you guys. So hope you guys enjoyed this video and peace.